The Big Ten championship game versus Ohio State is the biggest game in the history of Indiana football, but will the Hoosiers be ready?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Big Ten championship game is finally here. It's the Indiana Hoosiers and the Ohio State Buckeyes, the number one Buckeyes and the number two Indiana Hoosiers. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. He is Jay Stephens of Locked On Buckeyes. And it's been a little bit since we've talked, and we talked back in the summer. And I don't know if we have this matchup, Jay. I think we felt good it could happen. There was a possibility, but Ohio State and Indiana for the Big Ten championship game, my friends.
It's wild, man. If you were to talk to me about 10 years ago, or even when the Big Ten put this championship game into reality, and you ask me if in 2025 Ohio State would be playing Indiana 1-2 matchup in the Big Ten title, I would have said you're crazy. I would have said you're ludicrous. Like, there's absolutely no way in my head at that time that Indiana would be able to have a team good enough to even be 1 or 2 in the country, let alone at the same time being top in the conference to have a shot to win the Big Ten title. But here we are. The Hoosiers are really good. The Buckeyes are really good, too. This is, to me, the biggest game of the weekend. And once again, ESPN College Game Day, they miss a mark in going to a marquee game that fits a Big Ten opponent. It was almost a understood thing to me, like, oh, they're absolutely going to go to Indiana. No, they're not. They're going to go down to Atlanta once again. It's almost like something like they have a contract maybe to go to Atlanta for the SEC title game. I'm being sarcastic a little bit, but
it seems like it, though. Yeah, it does. And so, I don't know how you skip on the number one team in the country versus the number 2 team in the country, but I think you and I both would agree that Ohio State is number 1 for a reason, and Indiana is number 2 for a reason. These are the 2 best teams in college football. Now, there are some really good ones behind us, right? Texas Tech and Oregon and Georgia and Alabama and things like that. But, man, it's no doubt. I mean, these 2 teams have dominated. They're undefeated in the regular season. They really haven't played a whole lot of close games, and when they did, they took care of those games. Ohio State even more so than Indiana. And so it's fascinating to see what this game is going to become. And we're going to talk about Ryan Day versus Curt Cignetti here in a moment, talk about the Heisman Trophy basically being up for grabs in this game between Mendoza and Julian Sayin, and then we'll make our predictions at the end. But Ohio State got some news this week, my friend, about Brian Hartline, the OC and wide receivers coach, heading down to South Florida, but sounds like he's going to finish out the season, right?
Oh, yes, he is. That's a huge benefit for Ryan Day because while Hartline is now going to be the head coach at USF, and I'm happy for him. First off, I'm very happy for him. It was almost an expected thing at some point this offseason or next offseason that he would become a head coach at some level. Yeah, you would love for it to be a power conference team, but you're the American. I have a lot of respect for those teams in that conference, and so hats off to him, his family going down to Florida, a place where he played NFL football in the Sunshine State for, I think, 6 or 7 years. He was there with the Dolphins, so he's going back to familiar territory. I'm happy for him. I'm also happy he's sticking around.
Yeah.
Going into this game, if Ryan Day had to take over play calling at full time while also being the head coach of the team, that could be a formula that could be disastrous for Ohio State to where Cignetti can take advantage of it. It is not saying Ryan Day can't be a great play caller. We know he is. But if you're trying to do something for the first time all year in the biggest game of the season, a little bit tricky to do so. So I think it's big for Ohio State that they're keeping Hartline. Moving forward, it's a massive loss. I mean, even Chris Henry Jr., at the time of this recording, hasn't signed with anybody yet on the first day of the early signing period. Right now, it seems like it's down to Oregon and Ohio State, and Oregon's pushing very hard to land a 5-star receiver. Not shocked that they're doing that, but that's the Hartline effect. Hartline's not there. The young man may go somewhere else to play college football.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a good coordinator. And I was telling you before we hit record, I thought he would have taken an even bigger job. And not that South Florida's not a big job or not a good job, especially for your first head coaching gig, but I just thought a P4 team was going to snatch him up. But I still think he'll find his way to a P4 team at some point. But the big news is the idea that he's finishing out the season. So Indiana still has to go up against that Brian Hartline offense, but it's an Indiana defense. And our buddy Spencer McLaughlin on Locked On College Football was talking to me the other day, and he said, I'm kind of surprised that the Indiana coordinators haven't been poached yet with Shanahan on offense and Brian Haynes on defense, because I think they're two of the best coordinators in college football. When you look at the numbers, man, it doesn't get better than what Indiana's doing on both sides and what Ohio State's doing on both sides, and that's why these two teams are meeting on Saturday in Indianapolis.
It doesn't, and I think the Shanahan thing is it's tricky, but also, if I'm not crazy, or if my memory is working correctly, I believe he's had a long track record of being with Cignetti for quite a long time, which that could be a big reason why he is sticking around with him. Also, Indiana football is going to pump a lot more money into the contracts for these coaches, and that could be a major selling point. Like, hey, stick around, we'll pay you, you'll keep winning, you'll stay at the top of the polls, and you'll get the bonuses at the end of the year. So that's a major thing as well. Yep. But these coordinators on both sides, not just Indiana's coordinators, but also Ohio State's coordinators, these are two of the best duos in the country on both sides. It's weird that they're both in the Big Ten, but Matt Patricia's been, oh my gosh, so much fun to watch with the smile and how happy he is, and the joy being at Ohio State has brought to his life, and seeing the connections he has made with players like Cade McDonald and Caleb Downs. And I think it's going to be a big reason why those guys are going to go all out, not just for the title to be at the top of the Big Ten, but they're going to go all out for their coach, because they genuinely love this man and love being coached by him.
And then you got the guys at the top. It's Ryan Day, the young, fiery guy who gets going and finally gets over the Michigan hump, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then Curt Cignetti, the old guy, he wears glasses. He doesn't say a whole lot, but he says a lot when he doesn't say a lot, if that makes any sense. And two guys that are completely different, but at their core, Jay, they're just football dudes, and they are so good at what they do. And I cannot wait to see them go up against each other and what they have up their sleeve for each other on Saturday night.
It's going to be a battle, man. It's going to be a battle. One thing I think when it comes to these two head coaches, they both have their formulas. They both have their styles, and they don't normally go away from it. But this year's been weird for Ryan Day. Not weird in a bad way, but Ryan Day has not been the attack or highly explosive passing offense that you're used to. No, it's been very slow and methodical, and the approach has led to the Buckeyes having the most efficient offense in the country. I think they also have one of the slower offenses in the country, too. So the pace is slow, but the pace is very efficient. And that's one thing to watch in this game. Against Michigan, Ryan Day said we're going to attack. And the first two plays, one to the right side of Carnell Tate, incomplete pass. The second pass of the game to Jeremiah Smith. Great defense, might I add, that led to an interception. I wonder if Ryan Day is going to attack in a way that he did against Tennessee and Oregon in last year's playoff. Because if he does, and if these guys stay healthy, we still are not sure if these guys are 100%. But if Ryan Day decides to attack, I think that's a major benefit for the Buckeyes moving forward.
And Indiana's defense is going to be tested. Good news is you've got some NFL dudes back there. So does Ohio State. But Indiana has D'Angelo Ponds, who I expect to be put on Jeremiah Smith. And then it's figuring out, well, who covers Carnell Tate, who covers a tight end, and who covers everybody else for Ohio State. But between Ryan Day and Curt Cignetti and the coordinators, the coaching matchup is phenomenal. But so is the quarterback matchup. You've got the two betting favorites for the Heisman Trophy for Indiana and Ohio State. We talk about those guys and how the winner could be the winner of this game. We have that coming up next on this Locked On Crossover. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels a little bit different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And hopefully, Indiana has some or a lot of those in a good way tomorrow when they take on Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. That spread currently sits at 4.5 with our friends at FanDuel. And look, that line could move a lot during the game. If Indiana, maybe you get a pick from D'Angelo Ponds, maybe you get a touchdown pass from Fernando Mendoza, and that spread starts to jump around a little bit, Indiana could see that spread advance, and Indiana could try and take down the Ohio State Buckeyes. So you can be a part of that with FanDuel during the Big Ten championship game or during NFL games with live betting. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Welcome back to this Locked On crossover of Hoosiers and Buckeyes. He is Jay Stephens of Locked On Buckeyes. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. Make sure you subscribe to both of our respective channels on YouTube. Drop your score predictions down in the comment section. We want to see and hear from you. Do you think it's Ohio State? Do you think it's Indiana? Is it high scoring, low scoring? Tell us what you think down in the YouTube comments. And also make sure you follow us on your audio podcasting platforms. And Jay, we were just talking about the coaches, right? And how awesome that matchup is going to be. But you literally, according to our friends at FanDuel, have the two betting favorites. And it's been this way for basically the entire back half of the season. The two betting favorites to win the Heisman Trophy. It's Fernando Mendoza at the top from Indiana, and it's Julian Sayin and Ohio State at number 2. I think we should make our pitches. I think we should tell the nation, tell our people why our respective quarterbacks should win the Heisman Trophy. I'll let you start from the Ohio State perspective.
It's pretty easy when you think about Julian Sayin being the guy to win the Heisman Trophy. He's been the most efficient quarterback all season. He bounces back in a way that he did last week after making a boneheaded throw to show what he's made of and how tough he is, and just slice and dice the Michigan Wolverines defense all day long. But that wasn't the only time he's done that. You can look week after week after week against any opponent. He controls the game. He leads the offense. And, yeah, it helps when you have elite guys on the outside, but he has to put the ball where it needs to go on time and on target and have elite ball placement. And he has that in every game. He has at least 5 or 6 games this year where he's throwing the ball with over 80% passing, which is absurd. Things you don't even think about. He set the regular season record for the highest completion percentage in a regular season, which is also absurd. But that goes to another reason why he should win the award, because his processing is at a level that most quarterbacks can't even touch, even guys in the NFL. Julian Sayin, to me, is going to be great on Saturday in the Big Ten Championship game and just cement his spot to win the Heisman Trophy in 2025.
I know Diego Pavia from Vanderbilt has started to slide into this conversation too. I understand why. I think it's a little ridiculous, especially since we're talking about the nation's two best teams and their quarterbacks. They should be the top 2 in this conversation. Do you think it comes down to the winner of this game and which one plays better ultimately wins the Heisman Trophy? Then I'll talk about Mendoza in a minute. But do we think that that's truly what this comes down to, is the game on Saturday?
Yeah, it's come down to a quarterback award, and if Notre Dame had one loss, or even if they were defeated, honestly, Jeremiah Love would get more love for the award. I think he's a phenomenal player. He's had a great season, but I don't think his season has been so much better than what Mendoza or Sayin have done this year. Diego Pavia keeps talking. I don't like bringing politics into sports, but I saw he was trying to petition Donald Trump to executive order to extend the playoff to 16 teams so Vanderbilt could get in. 1, that's dumb. 2, who's to say Vanderbilt will still get in? And also, I don't think the playoff committee wants to decide if there's going to be, like, where the other 4 games are going to go. Will it be 8 games in the first round? Like, I don't think they want to deal with that at all.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why, like, last minute stuff, the logistics, schools. Oh, we had our last home game last weekend. No, we have a home game in 2 weeks. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of food. Those are people that weren't planning on working that have to work now. It's a lot of stuff that people don't want to deal with. So I don't like bringing politics into it. He did it. Jacob brought up Diego Pavia. That was on my head, but no. I do.
You had to get that off your chest. I understand.
I do think that this game, as long as these quarterbacks play the way that we think they're going to play, this game will decide who is going to win the Heisman Trophy.
And I hope that it's Fernando Mendoza from Indiana. And I absolutely think it can be. You're talking about a guy who has thrown for over 2,700 yards this season, has just 5 interceptions. And on those 5 picks, he's bounced back from all of them. That's been the biggest thing for me. Some of them have not been pretty, Jay. And you could say that if the defenses made plays that they were supposed to, he could probably have double that, just being quite honest with you, with some of the passes that he has put in harm's way. But every time he throws the pick, he comes right back, touchdown drive, including a game-winning drive against Iowa, a Heisman moment in several games, including Oregon, Penn State, Iowa as well. I mean, he's had so many of those plays that you look back on all these Heisman Trophy winners. You're like, yep, that's the one that got it done. And Mendoza has 3 or 4 of those. And I think it's his decision making, his timing, and he just makes some of these cross field throws in the hands of the receivers that shouldn't be made in college. That's what Mendoza and Sayin are doing right now. And it's so much better than everybody else. But the idea that Mendoza's doing it with some really good players, but not great players at times. I mean, the offensive line is nowhere near Ohio State's. Receivers are similar, but not as good. Tight ends are fine, and you're still out there making plays. And I think Mendoza just has the field vision and the confidence and the swagger that has gotten Indiana to an undefeated season, has them in a Big Ten championship game. And I'm fascinated to see what his play will be like, because remember, when Ohio State and Indiana played last year, it wasn't Mendoza. It was Curtis Rourke, who got drafted and went to the NFL draft, and now you've got another guy. So I think Mendoza's the best quarterback in the country. I think he makes plays when he needs to, and the dude's just a flat-out winner. So I think he's your Heisman winner. He's the favorite for now, but if he doesn't play well in this game against Ohio State, he could absolutely tank, and then we'll have to see what the voters decide to do. But is there a matchup, before we move on and get into our final predictions and things, is there a position or a matchup, Jay, outside of these quarterbacks that you think is the most important for either side in the Big Ten title game?
Well, the most important to me is always in the trenches, but I'm going to go outside of that for conversation's sake and hit some more big points. Indiana's defensive backfield versus the receivers at Ohio State. You could throw Max Clare in that too, because he's a big part of the passing attack. I am very curious to see how Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate play in a dome where you're not playing outside in the elements. Also, We're not sure how healthy these two guys are. And I talked about it earlier, Jacob, about how opportunistic the Hoosiers passing defense is. I think their plus minus in the turnover margin at one point was like plus 16, like something stupid. But that's how they have been all season long. But also, there really hasn't been an answer for Carnell Tate or Jeremiah Smith. The only answer is hopefully they don't play because they're too hurt to play. But even if they're banged up, they're going to play in this game. I am very curious to see how the defense plays against these guys. Because last week we saw Michigan got 2 passes. First 2 passes, they defended them very, very well. A pass breakup and an interception. The next thing you know, Michigan didn't have an answer. And I'm curious to see if that's going to happen this weekend, where maybe Indiana gets a couple of passes early. Maybe they get a pick early in the game. And then maybe they're basically following how the receivers follow, how they bounce back, but also how Sayin bounces back. So my obvious answer with this in matchups, it's a battle in the trenches. But for conversation's sake, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are big reasons why the engine is moving the way that it does in Columbus, Ohio. So I'm very curious to see how that chess match goes during the game.
Well, I'll say this about that Indiana defense, because you're right, it is opportunistic. And when they force turnovers, the offense has been so good this year, Jay, about converting and making that a reality, right? Getting into the end zone, putting points on the board, and rewarding your defense for forcing those turnovers. I am going to go to the trenches, but I'm going to go to each team's defensive line and how each team can run the football. That's what I was impressed by with Ohio State against Michigan, was they gave it to the guy named Bo Jackson to run the football. What a crazy idea that is, right? I'm sure that joke has been used way too many times on your show, but it wasn't even a bunch of chunk yardage plays. He had 2 or 3 maybe, but had carry after carry after carry. And that Michigan defensive front just got worn down, which doesn't happen often in Ann Arbor. Michigan was not able to hang. Indiana has to find a way to do so. I love the interior defensive line for IU. The linebacker unit is probably the best unit on the defense, and that's going to be the one who has to hit somebody at the second level, chip that receiver coming by, and just stay disciplined on whatever running game that Ohio State puts on the field. And then in reverse for Indiana, running the football is everything. If you can use your two-headed snake of Roman Hemby, Kalon Black, I think you have a good chance, but that Ohio State defensive front is absolutely nasty.
That's a good way to describe it. Absolutely nasty, because that's what they have been all season long. Yeah. The later you get into the season, they have been stronger and stronger. And honestly, they've gotten a little bit of rest because the schedule was mapped out in a way that they were playing some pretty poor teams.
Yeah.
Streak of Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers. And it's not Ohio State's fault. Nowhere close to being Ohio State's fault that these teams aren't good. One of them, UCLA, fired their coach. Purdue had a first-year head coach, and then Greg Schiano. The team had a better offense, and the defense, which is what Schiano's known for, the defense was pretty poor. So, like, that's what Ohio State was going up against. In the defense, those guys got some necessary rest. And you saw that in a big way come up last week against Michigan, where they were healthy, they were strong, they were eager to get back on the field, and their front strong. When the Buckeyes just lean on their starters up front on the defensive line, and they don't like to rotate on the ends, Keanu Jackson Jr. and Caden Curry, that's one of the better defensive end duos in the country. I don't want to say it's the best because there's so many out there, so many great ones. But these guys are so good in their versatile to where even in passing situations, you can put Caden Curry at the nose, and he's so quick and shifty. While he's 50 to 60 pounds less lighter than the center, he finds a way to quickly penetrate the offensive line and get into the backfield. You add in Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, two guys that could easily be first-round picks in the NFL draft. I think one thing that's sneakily great about this defense is Arvell Reese as a spy, because he finds a way to line up in the A or B gap, and it could be a fake, it could be a blitz, it could be a fake blitz and spy, it could be a straight spy, and he doesn't move anywhere at all. And that's another avenue where the Buckeyes defense up front can find ways to penetrate the O-line of Indiana. I know we were talking about the rushing attack, but they're so good in all areas of the game that Mendoza, I don't believe he's seen a defense like this all season.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, there's been some good ones, Iowa, Oregon, etc. But you're right. This will be the best defense that Indiana has seen. But I think it could be one of the best that Ohio State has seen on the other side as well. And so given all of that, who's going to win? Who walks away as the Big Ten champion? And plus, how does that impact the college football playoff? We talk about that in our final segment on this Locked On Crossover right after this. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and a guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories. Because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure it out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. So who could you get this for? Well, your grandparents are going to love it. Your parents are going to love it. Maybe you've got a significant other. Maybe you've got a teacher or a boss or somebody that loves to have pictures on their desk or in their home or by their bed. The Aura Frame is the way to go. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get in time for the holidays. Also, support the show and mention that Locked On Hoosiers was the one to send you there at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Final segment on our Locked On crossover of Buckeyes and Hoosiers as we get you ready for the Big Ten championship game. The #1 Ohio State Buckeyes, the #2 Indiana Hoosiers. Biggest game of the weekend, and we are getting you ready for it. And so, Jay, before we get to our final predictions, and then we'll talk about the playoffs and what that looks like as of now. Final rankings, of course, come out on Sunday. What's the one thing Ohio State cannot do if they want to win this football game? What's the mistake or the bad thing or maybe a bad tendency you've seen over the last couple of weeks? Because I have one for Indiana. What is it for Ohio State that they cannot do if they want to get this win?
It's not something I've seen this year, but it's something in the past that could creep up in a big game where Ohio State goes away from a formula that has worked, that has gotten them to this point. When you think about Ohio State's team this year, it's a very strong defense. That's very versatile, that has answers for anything an offense throws at them. But offensively, it's been more of a slower, methodical approach. And Ryan Day's message all season has been just do what's needed to win. If you have to run the ball, run it. If you have to throw the ball, throw it. If you have to give a pressure off the edge, do it. But simply do what is needed to win. That's why Ohio State's the number one team in the country. Now, talent helps with that too. But the Buckeyes have found a way to lean in on the messages that Ryan Day has been preaching all year. Just win. Just win, baby. That's it. If they try to get style points, or if they try to play a game that's not suited for this team, that could be a recipe for disaster. And I made a comment earlier that you haven't seen that this year. I think Ryan Day may have been teetering that way a week ago. If the game kept spiraling,
sure,
Ryan Day could have been pushing some buttons that he hadn't pushed all year to hopefully not have the same outcome of the past four times Ohio State played Michigan. If Ryan Day just plays his game, and here's one thing I hadn't said yet. If Hartline taking a new job becomes a problem, Ryan Day has to call plays. I have not really made that comment on a show, so here we are right now on this crossover. I think Hartline's going to be fine, but you truly have no idea how a man is going to be when his new job's in Florida. Jacob, it's cold in the Midwest right now. Florida doesn't have any snow. They don't have temperatures below freezing. They don't have any of that. And so if you think about him in signing period right now, trying to learn his recruits and players and the coaches that he's dealing with, if that becomes a problem, that could be a recipe for disaster that Ohio State hadn't really planned for. But here we are right now. This is the reality of college football.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that's something I've noticed from the Ryan Day camp from the outside looking in I think you mentioned earlier the reference of the college football playoff a year ago. After losing to Michigan for the fourth time in a row, they go in the Tennessee game and just absolutely light it up. And they do that all the way to a national championship game. It's like, man, don't play scared. Don't play timid. Just play good football. Use your weapons that you have, and that's exactly what they did. If Ohio State does that, I don't think anybody can beat them, but I'm hoping that Indiana can find a way, especially on the defensive side of the football, to try and slow that down and get them out of their comfort zone. But for Indiana, to answer the question that I proposed of what can the Hoosiers not do to win this game, it's turn the football over. And I mentioned earlier about Fernando Mendoza, who, again, I think is the best player in college football. I think he's going to win the Heisman Trophy if he has a good game on Saturday. You cannot give Ohio State extra opportunities. You know this, Jay. They're too good. They will take advantage the same way Indiana does. And Mendoza has been putting the football in harm's way. He did it 3 times against Purdue. Okay. But Purdue wasn't good enough to catch the football, and so they didn't get the picks. Ohio State is, and they will return it and go the other way. And so if you keep it out of Ohio State's hands in general, keep that offense on the sidelines, and don't turn it over on short fields. You already mentioned Ohio State loves to dominate time of possession. Indiana can't afford to do those things. So if you want to win, you cannot turn the football over and give Ohio State extra opportunities to score and put it in the end zone. And so with that, Jay, it's obvious who we're going to pick in these games, but tell me why Ohio State, in your mind, is going to win the Big Ten title.
There are 2 constants with Ohio State's team all season: Julian Sayin and the defense. Yeah, you got great players on the outside. Jeremiah Smith, Carnell, Tate. They've been banged up a little bit. They've missed some time. Bo Jackson early in the year didn't play against Texas, and he slowly got up to speed to be one of the better backs in the Big Ten as a true freshman. So some guys have been banged up, haven't played. One guy was a little bit slow in progression and developing as a running back. Julian Sayin, this defense, 2 different sides of the ball, but the recipe has been the same. They have been lights out all season. Nobody's really been able to figure out how to light up Ohio State's defense or score more than 16 points against Ohio State's defense. No one's been able to do that. Julian Sayin, a lot of the same things I said earlier, so I'm not going to become a broken record, but Julian Sayin has been great all year. And this young man's ability to be an elite passer and put the ball in the right spots over and over and over, where only his guy can get it and not where the DB can bat it down, that is a big asset for Ohio State this weekend. Jacob, I'll say my score prediction, and Hoosier fans might be shocked. I think Ohio State wins 31-17. And this is not a knock against Indiana as far as, well, they only scored 17 points. That's the most points anybody would have scored against Ohio State's defense this year, where earlier was 16 points, and that was Illinois scoring that in the October portion of the schedule. I think Indiana scores 17 points. I just have so much faith in Julian Sayin to get the job done and this defense to slow down an Indiana offense that has been lighting everybody up. I don't know how many times they scored 50-plus points in the game this year, but my guess has been over 6 or 7 because that's how good they are. Cignetti is a good coach. But Ryan Day has a machine right now. They're treating this like a business trip. This means something to these players. And I think the 31-17 outcome, Ohio State wins by, 14 points, and they win the Big Ten title for the first time since 2020.
Our friends at FanDuel have this odds, and this line has been jumping all over the place this week. It's bouncing back and forth between 4 and 6 points. So depending on what it is, or when you're watching and listening to this, or by the time the game kicks off, I think it'll be under a touchdown. Look, I think Indiana pulls it off. I really do. I think Indiana has gotten healthy. You talk about Ohio State getting healthy. Indiana has had to do the same thing, especially in the linebacker unit, in the receiver room. Elijah Surratt was able to get back on the field last week. He's Indiana's best weapon. People don't talk enough about Surratt and Omar Cooper as the 1-2 duo on this receiving core because of guys like Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate at Ohio State. It's just how it goes. But Indiana's offensive weapons are some of the best in the country. And I think they're going to find a way to make a couple of big plays, have Ohio State on its heels defensively, which doesn't happen very often. And Indiana's going to have to score not every possession, but most of them. And I think it's a little higher scoring than people are giving it credit for. I like Indiana 31-28. They will force a turnover in this game. If Indiana can score on that turnover, I think they find a way to pull this one out. It should be a great crowd. It's in downtown Indianapolis. Jay, I don't know if you know this. Indiana basketball is playing the same day in Indianapolis, just at a different arena. So we'll see how many fans migrate from one to the other. I know Ohio State fans travel extremely well. It doesn't matter if it's in Indiana, California, or in China. They'll be there to watch their Buckeyes play. And so it should be a fascinating game. And then the college football playoff rankings will come out. Hopefully neither team is punished for losing this game, whichever way it goes. And Indiana, Ohio State can represent the Big Ten in the college football playoff. But he is Jay Stephens of Locked On Buckeyes. I'm Jacob Goins of Locked On Hoosiers. We're looking forward to a fun game on Saturday and then the college football playoffs as well. So until next time, Buckeyes and Hoosier fans, stay safe, and we'll talk to you later.